So welcome to the People Performance Podcast with me, Martin Johnson.
And me, Harriet Johnson.
Harriet, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for having me here today.
So excited to have Harriet here. What's worth mentioning first and foremost is Harriet is no relation.
No.
We share the name Johnson, but we are no relation. But we do go back. And I think it's worth mentioning as our guest today, where we first met, and I'm going to try and piece this together. I think it was the back right at the beginning with the Absolutely Cultured program in the City of Culture in Hull in 2017.
It was, I think, at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, when we were transitioning from it's been City of Culture, what next? And I was working at City of Culture and staying when it turned into Absolutely Cultured and became to you.
You did. And you were running at that time a couple of big events for the volunteers. And for anybody in the local area who remembers the City of Culture, the volunteers had was it purple coats? Blue coats.
Yeah.
And they were easy recognisable, but there was wonderful volunteers from around the region. And you got them all together over 2 days. I think it was 500 people at each, so 1,000 people over 2 days. Was that correct?
Yeah.
And you booked me to come and do the opening keynote.
Yeah.
And we've just been laughing about it off camera, but of all the gigs I've ever done, some more high profile than others in elite sports and in corporates, of all the gigs I've done, number one, they're the ones that I thoroughly enjoyed. There was something incredibly purposeful about working with volunteers. And number two, the videos we captured of that talk have gone the most viral of any T2 video we have ever launched. Over 1 million views, comments and likes on that talk.
Well, there was an energy in the room, wasn't there? So that'll come across. And Tara mentioned your jumper.
The famous maroon jumper. We laugh about it here at T2. Harriet's already told me it was a rubbish jumper. But I wore for some reason, a V-neck maroon jumper. And it's like online now, every time something goes viral or commented, it's that bloody jumper. I burnt it. It no longer exists. But yeah, it was a real, do you know what? Reflecting on it, Harriet, being first introduced to you and that whole movement across Absolutely Cultured and the inspiration I took from the sheer amount of people volunteering in the City of Hull to make that City of Culture year an amazing thing really inspired me.
Oh, good.
And then since then, over the last few years, probably over the last 7 years now, we've stayed in touch and you've engaged with me on various projects you're running in the region, and I've always picked up and I've always answered and come and done it. So I always find being in your presence, Harriet, very rewarding. I find it humbling work. I find it feels like you're giving back a little bit. It feels like you're helping people who help others. And there's something magical about that. And I guess that links into my first opener. How long have you been volunteering or working in the volunteering and charitable sector for now?
So I've worked in the charitable sector for 17 years and I've had multiple jobs across that. So when we first met, I was running the volunteer programme for City of Culture. I was in charge of supporting them and looking after them with a big team. There was 2,500. But prior to that, I worked in wildlife conservation. And then I've obviously moved to where I am now at a community foundation. So I've apart from a couple of early years working in waste management, that's another story. I've always worked in the charitable sector.
That's an interesting transition, isn't it? Waste management to, charitable sector. However, my first question, why?
So I knew you were going to ask this question and I was really trying to think about it. And I think there's loads of different reasons of why you end up working in a job. I know that deep down, I have a bit of a save the world complex and I've got to make a difference. And I'm sure you can do that in the private sector and businesses, but there's a whole other world out there that needs you. And when you're putting your energy into that reward is very high. So it's I'm not altruistic. I get so much from doing this work and working with great people. I don't know, just always driven that way. Sometimes I wish I wasn't. I was thinking about this as I drove over. Like, financially, it's not a wise decision. It's not a high-paid sector. You're often underpaid, but the reward outweighs that, I think. So,
well, I was going to say you're not in it for the money. And I say that also to people who serve in the public sector, whether it's NHS on the front line or fire service, police. They're not overly paid for the sacrifice and effort it takes to do what they do. And the same would go for you. So you've got to have that deep sense of purpose connected to it.
yeah.
Like to get you out of bed in the morning and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to feel like the end product is going to be worth it. And ultimately, I'm guessing across all of those different roles you've just described, that ability to help people and make a difference to human beings is the reward.
Yeah.
In some fashion.
Yeah. And so now, I think what I do now is quite an unusual job. In fact, there's no other thing quite like us across the UK that I'm aware of that's place-based. I run a place-based leadership programme for people who work in the charitable sector. So we support 500 leaders in Hull and East Yorkshire who run charities, some of them quite small, tiny, or they might even be a volunteer themselves and not getting paid, and some of them larger. But that as a sector doesn't have any input of any, financially, they're not able to afford to put their staff through training and support and coaching. So we're sort of stepping in and doing that. And so although I'm not delivering frontline anymore on the charitable sort of what I always see as like quite a frontline service, the charity sector, I am supporting those people and helping them be able to turn up and be the best they can at work so that they can be more effective in their communities.
I spoke a few months back at the Hull Truck Theatre for you at one of the events you did for this, and it was amazing. And like I say, your events are always well attended. That's the number one I think I'd say. They're always well attended. They're always well organised. And I always come away from them going, wow, that was really enjoyable and really fulfilling. So it's difficult to do it well. There's a lot of people out there doing charitable work, but to do it well, I also would say, Harriet, that my experience is when I've engaged with you and on events, a lot of the people are behind you as much as the cause.
Yeah.
And that's the art of relationships, isn't it? Winning hearts and minds. So people want you to succeed as much as they want the charity to succeed. And I don't know if you've ever reflected or thought about that, but I see that.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna get awkward, isn't it? I think, yeah, God, discomfort. I think my reaction then is like a pure, like across the voluntary sector. I always see this, like people will be like, get a compliment, can't cope with it, because we're all about other people. I think it tends to attract that type of individual. Whenever we do any of our psychometric testing, it's often people lean, those quadrants of that, people leaning, carers, altruistic kind of points, like approaches to working and leadership. So yeah, any compliment I'll be mega awkward about. But yeah, it is, people do fall, like you, I am a leader and I am really professional. And I think the thing that I always really care about with the voluntary and the charitable sector is I really don't like the phrase the third sector, because I don't think we are the third sector. There's a tapestry of organisations in any place that leads brilliantly. So there's the private sector, there's the public sector, and then there's the charitable sector. And we're all equally as important to lead a functional, vibrant area. And I think in COVID, we really saw that when our charities stepped up and filled the gaps that are wider, the NHS and the fire service couldn't cope with the volume of need. And that's where the charity sector were like, well, we're already on that. We're there with that level with people, we can help. So I think, yeah, there's great leaders and it's a really professional sector that really cares. So it is a really interesting, complex, fascinating place to work.
Love that. Let me ask you a question about the future of the charitable sector and its sustainability. And what I mean by that is you already mentioned it doesn't pay very well.
Mm-hmm.
You've already mentioned that you've got to be in it for different reasons. But ultimately, we live in a world, an ever-evolving world, which is so expensive to live in, which cost of living is only rising and rising. how viable is it for good people who want to do meaningful charitable work to go down that career path when actually sometimes it doesn't pay enough for me to live the way I want to live and provide? So I've got no option but to go into the private or the public sector where I can command a slightly higher salary, even if the work is not as fulfilling for me. It's a basic necessity of survival that I have to provide. So are you seeing it be a challenge that how sustainable is it? Because not everybody has the luxury of going, I can just do what my purpose tells me to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's not one answer to that. I think that's the complexity of society, isn't it? I think there are some charities are set up from lived experience. So a lot of people might know a charity or be connected to a charity because perhaps they've had a health problem or they've got a child with a disability, and a charity is set up from someone who's got lived experience in that. They've set it up. Some of those people are doing it alongside existing jobs because they're doing it out of like passion. Some people are doing it because they've retired and they can afford it. And some people are doing it as a career because it is their call. In the same way you'd say to a nurse, like, why do you turn up every day and go in and work in A&E and for low reward? It's just in you and you can't change that. It is a challenge. The government's change on national insurance is going to massively impact charities because you can't just make another, however many £1,000s a month to cover that additional cost. But what I'm seeing is like a solution to that is how charities are coming together and apply, because a lot of charities exist by applying for funding applications from people like the National Lottery or trust funds or fundraising, is they're coming together in partnership and saying, hey, we all support the global majority leaders in Hull, or we all support young people in Gould. Let's connect and work together and apply for funding together, and we're stronger together, less competition, more collaboration. And that is absolutely happening in the sector, but out of necessity and out of that realisation that they can be more effective working together. And also I can't imagine many schools, when they talk to children and young people about what you can be in the future, say, hey, why don't you go and, for me, why don't you go be a project manager in a charity and earn a third of what you could in the private sector? It's just, but you just get drawn in, it attracts people. And then you do see a lot of people come, they've had their career in the private sector and they come into the charity sector. And I always find it fascinating when I'm supporting those leaders, because they'll say to me, oh, I just didn't realise how hard it would be, because it is, we're a professional sector. It's a high demand with a low amount of resources that we have to work with.
I always say, Harriet, that come the day I'm done with my goals and T2 and I've taken this to where I want to take it, and then someone else or whatever happens next to T2 is it happens. I think I would find immense reward in giving some of my time to something that was incredibly meaningful, where the financial aspect of it is no longer relevant. You're doing it purely because you can make a difference to something. So I get the whole people who have retired or want to do something a bit more meaningful. Absolutely. But on the whole, what you're saying is it's a challenge, because like you say, schools aren't priming the next generations to say, go and volunteer your time or work in the charitable sector. In actual fact, schools and younger generations are no longer saying, I want to be a joiner or a plumber or a fireman or firefighter, or I want to be in the police force or the military. They're going, I want to be a digital ninja or an AI software developer, or I want to run my own business from my back bedroom. So there's a number of sectors that are facing challenges with sustainability as the generations come through. And I have no doubt the charitable sector will be one of them. But having engaged with it is incredibly important. And I hope that message from this podcast gets out. My other question would be, yes, you've talked about funding from government sectors and from different pots of money and where investment can be made in communities, but how important is sponsorship and relationships with business charities?
Totally vital. So I feel like we've jumped into chatting and I've not even said where I work. So I work at Two Ridings, and that is a community foundation, and community foundations exist across not just the UK but the world. And they are a local place-based funder that tends to work with businesses, high net worth individuals who want to put money back into the places they're from, or the people that they know need that money. And we work with individuals who have reached the top of their career and they have spare money, they have the ability to give back, and we can direct those funds to charities that would make the best and need that money the most. So yeah, as a community foundation, that is our bread and butter, is working with businesses and individuals who want to give back. And that money, when it comes without strings, like if I'm working at the moment on a grant that's come from the government, and it comes with a great big pile of paperwork and loads of strings. But if a business says, do you know, I believe in what you're doing, I can see it, here's X amount, go with it. Or here's a little bit of money, but then there's some rooms to use, or I've got a big yard you can store your equipment in. It can open up and just create opportunities for charities like you wouldn't believe. And then within 2 ridings, my main role is working on a leadership program called Hey Confident Futures. And we have had the most incredible support from corporate organisations, free coaching. Like coaching's such an expensive thing to do, and it's given us, the opportunity to say, I think by the end of this year, over 40 people have had coaching from a really big internationally known organisation and their internal coaching scheme. You've come and done talks for us. There's people gift their time or their buildings, and it just means that we can have a bigger impact. So I think that it's that thing I was saying before, like it's a fabric, we're the fabric of the area, and when we connect well as different sectors, it's like where the good stuff, the magic happens. So yeah, businesses are vital. And I kind of if I'm honest, my motivation to come today was who will be listening, who can just hear a little bit about a different sector and maybe see it through different eyes and think, oh, I could contribute to that. I've got these resources. I've got a room that sits empty. I mean, God, room bookings in Hull, a space that's inspirational, we get these great facilitators in, and then sometimes we're in this tiny room. We want to be in a uplifting, bright space.
And there's plenty of businesses out there with very good facilities, with modern office spaces where they're not being used daily, which could make a huge difference to a session that you're facilitating for the charity. And I hope there will be, and I hope there are people listening to this who just start to think about how could we support or engage, no matter how small or big. And like you say, it doesn't always have to be a cash contribution. It can be spaces, coaching, development, resources, whatever it might be, that just makes a huge difference. And I'll be honest, I've been so driven in my career, Harriet, single-minded almost in my early days around, and we all have this where you go, right, I want to reach a certain aspiration goal or flag on the hill, and so you embark on your career and you're very single-minded about rising the ranks and gaining the skills and experience all to get to where you need to be. And I mean this sincerely. I was in the corporate world for a long time before T2, and you get caught up in this strange world of the corporate sector, and not only starting T2 on my own, having to really fight in the early years to build something humbled me, but doing the work with yourself, starting with that very first City of Culture year, and seeing what people do and what people give and the impact it can have on others really changed my mindset around it. And we're working with some incredibly big organizations now and sports teams. Can't mention their particular names, but a lot of people know that. But if you rang me and said, I've got 80 people in a room in the charitable sector who all need your time for an hour on leadership, I would prioritize it. And I think that's, again, not trying to, it's largely down to you and the way you've brought me into it. But it's also down to the feeling you get when you're able to do that.
Well, people are hungry for it because, when you work in the charitable sector, one of the things is they're probably the most resourceful sector. They can make so much happen with so little, which is something I think the private sector and businesses could use, because I think you get used to slush sometimes in that sector, and you might not even think that you do, but when you see your budgets versus what a tiny charity can achieve in a place-based situation, that when you're there talking to them, it can, that knowledge, they're hungry for it. They don't get it. They don't get to go, like I was talking to a colleague and she was saying, when I worked in the corporate sector, we got bonuses. I mean, I we don't get bonuses. Do you know, you don't get
extra money. We get salaries, right?
You don't get extra money. You don't, you feel lucky if you get to, if someone buys you lunch, it's not like there's not, those rewards don't come and they come in a different way. It's when someone smiles at you or you get a message and someone says, I've had messages when someone says that saved my life.
Oh, wow.
You just that is how powerful the charitable sector is.
Goosebumps then.
Yeah. And you're not resourced for it. I mean, that was when I was working in conservation and I had I had a spade in my hand and we're digging and this guy was I was waking up this morning and I had a very different plan for today, but I knew you were relying on me to come and volunteer. And I was like, I'm so glad my head's looking down because that is so powerful. But people in the charitable sector hear that every day. I've come today and you're the first person I've spoken to. I wouldn't have eaten. I would not have eaten if your charity doors weren't open and your lunch club was on. I'd have not had a warm meal this week.
And they're the moments where you go, doesn't matter around the hardships, the uncertainty, the sleepless nights, the challenges, that's worth it.
Yeah.
That's worth it. Let me ask you a question on leadership. So, as you know, here at T2, we're passionate about leadership. We help many businesses and private and public sector with leadership. Accountability. So one of the elements of leadership is how do you drive levels of accountability in others to go above and beyond and perform and do your job? And there's two types of accountability we talk about in leadership and performance psychology. There is accountability by desire, i.e., I want to do this for you and not let you down. And then there's accountability by fear, i.e., if I don't do this, there will be reprimand and I may be, lose my job, as an example. In well-paid corporate sectors and even in public sector organisation, there is a leadership element where you're paying these people reasonably well, or you should be paying them reasonably well, and therefore there is an accountability to deliver. In your sector, you've got the people who are paid, albeit low, to run the charity, and then you've got the volunteers who don't get paid at all. They're giving their time. Mm. So how does leadership work? In your experience, you still got to lead people. You still got to command performance. You've still got to get buy-in and get people to be mobilized and motivated and do what we need them to do. But you don't have that, if you like, luxury of accountability that some of the other sectors have.
Yeah.
Is that a fine art?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when it comes to the paid stuff and the stuff that are running charities, I think the importance of really high standards in the workplace are vital. Because so much of your money also is public money, so that accountability and that pressure is always there, and that is something that CEOs and trustees of charities are really acutely aware of. Actually touching on that, trustees in organisations are vital and they do hold the organisation accountable. When it comes to volunteer and managing volunteers, so that is a fine art, that you are I've been in situations where I've been responsible with my colleagues for 500 people who are there they just want to give their time in one big event during the City of Culture. You've got high risks, you've got security risks, you've got financial risks, you've got reputational, so you need those people to be on board. So you've got to be a really effective leader, a really excellent communicator. And to me, a volunteer's induction is vital, setting down really good ground rules and that respect for the bigger picture and what they're trying to achieve. And I think that actually that's why you came to speak to us. We were starting something new. We'd had this crazy mad year on City of Culture and we were going into the new phase where there might not be as many exciting moments, but we wanted the volunteers to know that they were still representing the city, the volunteer programme, what was now absolutely cultured. And that training that you came to do with us was all about thinking about who they are, how they present themselves. So it's vital. And I think that's sort of where Hey Confident Futures, the programme I work on comes in, is that we're there investing in organisations to keep them being professional, to keep them thinking about the accountability. But yeah, sometimes I don't think the volunteers I work with would, in the City of Cups, remind me saying sometimes it was like herding cats. Yes, it was really hard work, and
they don't have to be there, and at any moment they can choose not to be there.
And the fascinating dynamics of, like, when I first started my career and I was leading volunteers, I worked in the conservation sector. It was mostly male-led. All my volunteers were men. All of them could be my dad, or some of them could have been my granddad. And I'm there standing in front of them. And I think that made me learn really quickly.
Yeah.
You know, like, we're going on a farm. It could be dangerous. I'm in charge. I'm the first aid. And if anything goes wrong, it's on me. And I'm here to protect you. But what I can promise you is a really great time, high quality volunteer opportunity, and you'll feel good at the end of it. And I think that's like really important. And that constant relationship with the volunteer is probably more than you have with a member of staff. Sometimes you can leave a member of staff and you don't need to remind them every day they've done a great job. But after every single volunteer session, I would always thank someone and say, couldn't have done this without you. You were brilliant. You were vital. You helped us achieve this, because that makes them want to come the week after.
What I found, and I don't know if I shared this with you before, but after the second day, so we'd done 1,000 people over 2 days in that event, I think I possibly had the biggest line ever for books and book signings that I've ever had at an event, which was really humbling for me. But what was really interesting, I don't know if I've shared this with you, that not many of them got to the front and said, oh, what you said about X, Y, and Z. And I'd say the vast majority, some of them did, but the vast majority of them got to the front. I signed their book and they said to me, I just want to say that was awesome. And it's really nice to see a guy from Hull who's done incredibly well and can stand up there and do what you've done. And it was almost like they were more proud of the Hull, that I was from Hull.
Yeah.
And I was born and bred here, and I've gone on to do what I've done, and I stood on that stage in front of them and delivered that. They were more proud of the community and the whole connection than the actual content, which I'm sure they valued as well. And I just thought that's why they're volunteering, because they're bloody proud of this region. They're proud of Hull. They're proud to serve Hull. And more importantly, if I'd have been some guru from London or the States, I'm sure they'd have enjoyed it. But the connection to me, being local, was the common message that everybody said.
It's like deep in whatever charity you go to, whatever work they're doing, that depth, like I can't even think of the words, like that feeling. It's like right there. And they'll be like, I deeply care about children with Down syndrome, or I'm so passionate about Orchard Park, so I volunteer at our community centre because this is where I'm from, and I care, like that deep care. It's like, it's guttural. It's like beyond. It isn't the incentive. No one's giving them a paycheck. It's fundamentally like weaved within their souls.
Purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, it's such purpose.
You just define purpose. That's it. It's just in you, the passion, the natural connection to what you're doing, whether that's grassroots football or rugby or keeping a sports club alive or whatever it might be. That connection is something you can't manufacture.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Let me take it in a slightly different way, because we're flying now on motorway, like a bunch or two about anything. You come across to me and are a really good human. You're very humanistic. You feel the world. You know, you have to be connected to what you do, if that makes sense. I've got 2 teenage daughters, 16 and 14, growing up in a very progressive, different environment. And I always say being a parent's the hardest job I've ever done. Running a business, being in the military, anything. Being a bloody parent to my teenage girls is difficult. So I'm trying to find that balance with them, right? But this is a really deep and hard question, but I guess I'd be interested in your answer in this. What would your advice be to teenage girls growing up in the world we're growing up in now, entering the future of the workplace they're going to enter in the next 10 years? At a humanistic level, what would your advice to them be if I sat you down and said, listen to this lady, girls? What would you choose? There's probably lots, but is there anything specific you would?
I think Yeah, there's lots. And I would always talk to two teenage girls because having been there, I know the enormity of what the world feels like. But honestly, whenever I talk to anyone about what challenges they're going through or how hard work is or life is, my thing that just like a golden thread that runs through everything is the importance of the smallest things in life. And whenever you are definitely going to go through hard times, aren't you? Whatever, there's going to be something difficult. But when I step back and know what brings me the truest, most fundamental joy in my life, it's the littlest things. It's the snowdrops that come out at the start of February and that signals spring's coming and there's light. It's that like a friend that gives you a much bigger hug than normal. It's not they're the things you remember. They're the things you take with you. It's not like an award you win or, the amount of money in your bank or the car you drive. It is the tiniest things. And if you lean into those little things in life that come either when you need them the most or when you're least expecting or every day, rather than constantly seeking out something bigger, it makes life more enjoyable. And I do really think, I think it's shifting, but especially I'm a millennial and my generation was brought up like you can have everything, you can be anyone. There'll be a knight in shining armour that will come and like rescue you if there's anything goes wrong. There'll be great big... And actually those moments don't necessarily happen and some really hard ones have. But whenever I'm struggling, it's the littlest things like going outside and having a short walk, it's the tiny micro joys in life that really, really impact you. And I talk about that we do something called New to Leaders, which is our leadership program, a year-long transformational year-long leadership program with 14 leaders. And I have a session where I talk about being a recovering people pleaser, which I am. And that how I keep my cup topped up, and it is the micro joys. And every year, at least a quarter of the program, half the program will say something that I've introduced into my life is like the micro joys in life, just stopping and realizing how impactful and important they are. My kids giving me a hug in the morning, all the tiny, tiny things, they're so important. And if you tune into those, they're constantly making you feel better about yourself and life.
You're so right. And you made me think with the spring comment, because I play golf and through the winter, it's not the weather for golf. So golfers wait all year for spring to come around and summer. And those first few mornings of spring with the birds singing and the sun and it is, you just sort of, it lifts you. And but don't you think to enjoy those micro moments, you have to be present?
Yeah.
And we live in a world now, certainly teenagers with phones and Snapchat and TikTok and the digital industrial revolution, that it's hard to notice those micro joys when you are glued or you are so preoccupied all the time in the world we live in.
100%, but also by setting someone as simple as like, look for the small things in life and enjoy those. You're not, I think a lot of things are like, you'll be so much better if you drop everything and go and, do a 3-week meditation or go to a yoga trip, and all these things will make you feel good, but they're short-lived. Like if you're constantly drip feeding in good stuff that makes you feel better as a person. So if you do get your teenagers to put their phones down and just go, hey, like, let's just go 5 minutes outside, no phones, whatever. Like, just tell me something you see, or giving them a hug, like, put your phone down, let me give you a really big hug. Like, those things are so small. And if you absorb them, and the more I do that as a person, the better I feel, the more resilient I am, the healthier I feel, because they are just constantly there for me. And I love it.
Oh, love it.
Oh, how cheesy is that?
No, I love it. Honestly, it's amazing. And lots of podcasts we do on serious subject matter, and we don't often take time to go down this road. So I find it quite refreshing and incredibly refreshing. Okay, let me turn it to sort of the last area I want to talk to you about, and then we can cover any other things. So 17 years, you said you've been working in the charitable sector in multiple roles. However, by the time this podcast goes out, I think it's safe to say that it will be common knowledge that you are about to take a career change.
Yes.
And that career change is to start up something on your own and move away from the charitable sector. So I guess you can share or keep close to your chest what you wish now with this answer, but why now? What's the the driver behind it? Mm-hmm. And are you excited or daunted?
Yeah. Why now? So what? I have set up a flower farm. So
How did I not guess that that's what Harriet would have set up?
I've moved out into the middle of. I live in the middle of nowhere now, and we live on a small holding. And I'm growing very natural, very environmentally friendly, very sustainable flowers for wholesale and for events and weddings. And why? Because it from 2015, it's been a dream. So it's been quietly there for all of that time. And I have chipped away at making it happen. Like I mentioned, I've not been on a high salary. And I lived in the middle of the whole, had a postage stamp garden. So when I started telling people, I think I'm going to set up a flower farm one day, everyone looked at my garden and was like, yeah, right, where? And I am so drawn to the land. I'm so drawn to doing something bigger. And we're only a quarter of our land is put over to cultivation. The rest is for wildlife and conservation. And because I care about the planet. So I think, yes, I deeply care about communities, but first we've got to heal our planet. And so it's all about that. And I'm equal parts excited and terrified. You know, I've had a salary for the past 17 years. I have never had to ask people to buy a product and sell a product and sell me. I've run multi-million-pound projects, but it's totally different. Someone handing you the money versus...
And knowing you, this is going to be the biggest challenge for you. I think running a flower farm and making it a success and delivering a fantastic product and doing great for the environment is easy for you. I think you saying to people, you're going to have to pay me and I need the money, right? And that's probably going to be the transition for you without apologising for it. But
I'm really sorry, I've grown these beautiful things. Do you mind paying?
Loads of hard working, but you're going to have to give me some money now, yeah. But yeah, I love it. I love it because, again, it's something where I can absolutely see you being passionate about, and it's ticking all boxes. It's making a difference to the environment, to the community, but it's also allowing you to challenge yourself and test yourself and kick on and think about, can you build this thing? Can you make it sustainable?
Yeah.
Because, you know, you as giving as you are, Harriet, there needs to be challenge and excitement in what you do.
I've got to pay the mortgage. Yeah. You know, that's a real thing. But I can see so much challenge in this, and I can see every job I've ever had feeding into this. And, you know, like I want to be an educator. I want to be a leader within it. I want to make a difference and be impactful. I want to show that you can run a business and put the planet and people before profit. And, you know, all of those things excite me and that challenge. And I'm really intrigued about having the headspace as well that's created where I'm like on my own, and that clarity that I'm going to have. There's going to be oh crap moments where I'm like, I could just do with asking somebody. But I can also see how the work that I've done and the leadership and the development of individuals will weave into this, because I've got a space which is really cool and different, and I can see people come in there and expanding. I can see me bringing what I do into other places. So although I know I'm stepping away with my job title and my organisation not being in the voluntary sector, I will always be an ambassador for that and be connected to it. So yeah, I am really excited.
What's your timeframes for this? When do you think you'll be?
So I'll be going full time. I have been doing both jobs together. So I've been working 7 days a week for 2.5 years, which is interesting. And I will be full time on the flower farm from the 1st of April.
Amazing. Bang in time for spring.
Yeah.
Should be an amazing time. And finally, as you leave the charitable sector, and I'm saying leave as in full time, because as you've just established there, you will be an ambassador, and I'm sure you will be, because you can't say no, you will be getting drawn into all sorts of things to support things at times. But as you leave it as a full-time focus and career, and you move on to the flower farm and the future, you know, what's the one thing you hope to see in the charitable sector continue or build or change as you go forward?
Without a doubt, I want Hey Confident Futures, the leadership program, to exist beyond me. And I don't know if you can reflect back to when you came to our conference. There's like an energy in the room and momentum. And I feel like that doesn't need me anymore, and that will keep going because there's these brilliant people who are all connected and collaborating and stronger together. And one of our biggest emphasis is about generous leadership, and I want that to continue beyond the lifetime of my tenure there and moving into the next chapter. So I'd love to see Confident Futures as a program to exist. I'd love to have 100 people have gone through New to Leaders, so that there's these 100 buzzing charitable leaders in the city who are like little electrons or whatever they are, buzzing around the city, bouncing off each other, making magic happen. And I'd like to continue to see that overlap and that connection with the private sector and the businesses, because things aren't going to get easier for any of us. Yeah. We live in a very dynamic, challenging world. So the more connected, the more we're collaborating, the more potential we have to ride the waves that just keep coming in whatever crisis or challenge there is ahead of us. So keeping connected, stronger, all of that. I could just say loads.
Harriet, I could talk to you all day. We've almost done an hour there already, and I mean it sincerely. I don't just say it lightly. Whenever I'm in your presence, I always just feel humbled. I feel uplifted. I feel a little lighter. I feel like I've got perspective. What I'm stressing about and worrying about in terms of what's going on here at T2 and with all my clients and the day-to-day, and sometimes it just produces that, the pressures a little bit. And I think it's because we always end up having very human-led conversations. We always bring it back to what it means to be human and have connection and collaborate and support and help one another. So, and it's happened again today. It's been a very different podcast to what I would usually have, and I love that. I love it in a way, but I would just like to say that I've loved my time working with you on Absolutely Cultured, Hey Confident Futures, 2 ride-ins. I will continue to invest my time in that, even though you're moving out. I wish you so much luck with the new venture.
Thank you.
I think you'll be hugely successful. I can't wait to see it. And if I need some quality flowers to impress my wife,
100%.
On my anniversary, you can hook me up. But I hope people watching this have taken some stuff away from it and just had a moment to reflect. That's what it makes me do. It makes me reflect on a few things. And I'd say 6 months into your journey, I'd love to get you back on the pod. And is there a name to the flower farm, or is it just...
Yeah. No, it's called Gathered at Dusk.
Gathered at Dusk.
Because when I started it, I was literally going out after work to gather the flowers. And that just felt right. It had to be a bit ethereal and hippie. It wouldn't have been right if it was.
It's got to be hippie. I mean, it's got to be hippie to be you. Gathered at Dusk, love it. And maybe 6 months into that journey, we'll get you back in and see how you're getting on. Harriet Johnson, I've loved it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back shortly with another People Performance podcast.